Let me read you.
No, you're live. Sorry, too late.
Okay.
Let's make sure that our height is right. Yeah, let's drop these two. Just the light gives you just on the left side. You've got a
It's the shadow. Okay.
your healthy glow.
Thank you, Joe. Good morning, everyone.
Good
morning. So, how many of you have ever read this book? It's kind of classic.
Kindle, but I haven't.
On the Kindle? Yes, Debbie? Okay. A few of you, 20 years ago? So yeah, it was written in 1936, I guess is when it first came out. So we certainly deal a lot with working with people. So I think what I want to do today is take some challenging transactional situations and see if we can apply what Dale Carnegie teaches in this book to some of these harder challenges. Sound good?
Yeah, sure.
Dead quiet. Sure will, if that's what you really want to talk about.
Tofu, like the Chinese food.
Well, glad you're here. Everybody else's name. Okay, good. All right, ever had a situation where your client was
Unreasonable?
unreasonable,
Yes, all the time.
challenging, difficult?
You know, there's,
Okay.
I think that's a normal thing, but what's the word for like when they cross the line into something that's just, it's not
Not even normal.
this, or, you know, like crazy stuff.
Okay.
Mhm.
So maybe right away we have a buyer's perspective and a seller's perspective, and you know they're just going to be different anyway. So certainly we're trying to manage an expectation, and that's a big part of what we do. And maybe they come with their own preconceived ideas of what they think is reasonable. Lately, I had a buyer say that in the 5 homes that they've purchased in the past, all of them were vacant when they did a walkthrough.
Experience.
Yeah, so although that's not normal for us to ask a seller to move out, shut the door here. Although it's not normal for us to ask a seller to move out of a property during walkthrough, in their eyes, their expectation was that's exactly what you do. So how do we manage all that? What have you tried to do to have that go a little better?
Call Will.
Call Will. Okay. The concept of delegation. Okay. Yeah, Debbie.
So we constantly get into expectations from the seller, especially with lower income properties where they have to keep paying lot rent or whatever have you. And so we're trying now to say, here's how it goes. In my experience, this goes for months, that it's very difficult to get a loan. It's difficult. And so then I'm trying to say, when you get upset on month 2, this is very typical.
Okay. So you're trying to pre-manage it before it happens?
Yeah, trying.
Yeah, trying
It
to.
doesn't always help.
Okay. Okay. So maybe okay, I like the idea. Before I weigh in, let's get some more. What do you try to do, Ron?
Well, as you fill out the purchase contract, there's a section about the walkthrough. So if you're going over each section briefly, maybe that will come up, like what are your expectations? Or just the fact of, will you be wanting to do a walkthrough? So that you put that in the timeline, and maybe at that point, they're gonna say, oh
Okay.
yeah, are they gonna be out, or is it gonna be empty, or what? How does that work? And you would have handled it right there.
Okay, very good. So to skip forward through all of those paragraphs and just not speak about them sets us up for improper expectation. And then when the problem comes up, it's more difficult, isn't it? To say, oh, by the way, let me tell you how it works on a walkthrough. We're already to the walkthrough. It's too late. Very good, Ron. Okay. Yesterday there was a post on the UAR attorney's page that said the great thing about DocuSign is we can just we just sign and send, right? The bad thing about DocuSign, the challenge is no one's reading the contracts.
That's right.
So well, my agent said to sign it, initial it, and send it back. So that's what I did. Did you ever read it? No, I never read it. I trusted my agent. This is it's a problem for us, especially if you ask the agent, did you ever go through it? I mean, did you review the buyer's due diligence checklist? The scenario that they posted was that the property line, the fence was not on the property line. And they discovered it a couple of weeks after they moved in when the neighbor came over and said, hey, by the way, I'm not sure if you were aware, but the fence is not in the right place. And the new owner says, what do you mean? And he says, well, yeah, you're about 10 feet short and encroaching over on the other property. So you need to move it back 10 feet, which is a big surprise to them. So the next call the buyer now owner makes is to who? The agent saying, hey, how did we not know about this fence? And what it all came down to is everything is just DocuSigned. It's a common thread between all of it. Is it, well, they just said, sign and send and just email it back to me. So the legal description that showed up in the PR was missed. So that was a big point. The seller had mentioned, please check fence line, seller disclosure. All it says, please check fence line. That's all it said. The problems with boundaries, fencings or encroachments, it says, please check fence line. So initialed by buyer. So then the buyer due diligence checklist, which would cover the agent, was also just signed and dated and sent back. So the buyer, new owner, has found himself in a tough and challenging situation. So as we're talking about managing tough situations, the biggest piece of advice to start with is to make sure that you're managing from the beginning and that you're going through the documents even point by point. I used to take, say, the buyer's due diligence checklist in a buyer consultation, and I would just make a mark by every paragraph. How about the buyer broker agreement? Same thing, paragraph 1, paragraph 2. Let me explain what all these mean, and I would just check them as we go. But that's not the world we're in so much now, where it's this face-to-face is not the norm. Matter of fact, that unfortunately has become the unnorm. And now we're just saying, I'll go over it with you with DocuSign and send it. So I think we need to pull the dial back and say, I'm going to send this to you, but I can't send it yet until we go through it. Or I'm going to send it, call me when you get it. Instead of saying, please initial and sign and send back. Okay, once you get this, let me know when you can talk. Let's go over it before you sign. As a matter of fact, I intercepted, just to add on to that. Does that sound like good advice, though, by the way? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Okay, so maybe we all need to pivot a little bit. But I intercepted a transaction coordinator's exact instructions, because I was CC'd on it, that said, please initial and sign and send back. Time out. We're not signing an initial. Frank, we don't even agree with what's being sent. So I thought that was a little odd. But the process from the TC was just, well, that's my job, right? I shuffle the documents. So that's their job. But nothing in the document had been reviewed with the client. So problem. So how can we fix that?
Well,
what do we do?
Isn't it common I've never heard of such a thing. I mean, you call your client, you tell them this is what the seller wants or the buyer wants. I'm going to have to send you addendum 14 for you to sign because of this and that and the other. Is that good with you? Yes, it works. Okay. You send this in.
Yeah.
Then you send
Please
it.
initial and sign.
Yeah. Well, the key point is you've already gone over it. The key point is you've already reviewed it. The key part is they already know what they're signing. And if they've
How
had
do you prove that if it's a phone call and then they say, oh, I can't see it. I'm just curious.
Yeah. How do you prove that? What do you do if I said that sounds really nice, but did you really go over this?
Email
as
after.
per our conversation
Yeah.
this time.
So we're adding a little bit more to that. Instead of just initial and sign and send back, we're saying,
Send an email.
yeah, as we discussed earlier, here's the addendum correcting the issues we needed to correct.
But you're gonna find
Or
out.
whatever you're adding a little bit more dialogue. I especially like the line that says, as we discussed earlier, because it kind of puts it on the record. We had a phone call about this, remember?
Yeah.
So, and they said, we had a phone call earlier. So, okay, good. Those are really useful, by the way, if we find ourselves in trouble, then we can go back and say, well, the email said as discussed earlier, and then I have an outgoing phone call screenshot from the cell phone, and I can see how long the phone call was. So when the client says, whoa, wait, I don't understand this. No, we had a long conversation about it. Yeah, Debbie, question.
My question is that even though you're training us to do is to go through every line item, there's still the issue of the fence, which nobody really knows the answer to. And the thing is like, how do you somehow, I guess that's the point of this class, is sometimes, even though you've gone through every line item, the fence or the closing date didn't happen as fast as you'd like, there's still those issues that you can't get ahead of before they happen. Because the fence, I wouldn't even know what to do. Do you hire a surveyor before you close?
Sure. I mean, we would never do this. Here, let's act out the scene. We pull up, we're gonna look at the house, the seller's gone, we access the key box, drawer drops out, there's the key. We unlock the door, we walk in, we turn the lights on, we walk through the foyer, into the kitchen, out the back door, stand on the deck, and then we would never say, the fence line is the property line.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we would never say that.
No.
Okay, how about a better variation? Hey, Will, where do you think that property line goes? This is such a lovely lot. Where do you think it ends? We would never say what?
Must be the fence line.
It must be the fence line. Well, clearly it's the fence. Do you see a fence? How about another variation?
Well, even if you'd read, please check fence line.
Yeah.
What does that mean to me? I check it how?
Yeah, good question. So we follow up with the seller. Why?
Well, he is
what-
bringing attention to the fact.
Yeah,
that
there
there's a
might be
boundary.
something wrong with the fence line.
I'm sure, I'm putting an offer on the house this morning. There was a fence. You can tell there was a fence.
Yeah.
It's not there anymore.
Oh, really?
So my buyer's like, can you check on that fence line?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
So
And what do we say when a buyer says, hey, should I have a survey?
You say it's important.
Who's gonna pay for that? Who's gonna pay for that?
Very good, Ron.
Who pays for that, though? The
the
buyer who's interested or the seller who knows?
What does the rep say about who pays for all this information gathering?
The buyer.
The buyer.
But if it was the seller who was wrong in putting
Yeah.
the fence on somebody else's property.
Yeah.
Like,
But still, if
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
your information you wanted to gather, you don't want
Yeah.
the seller choosing and paying for that information. It's your information you're buying.
that's right.
Not every case is always the same. I would say, so 90 out of 100 times that the buyer is going to pay for these surveys. But what if this is something where, if we're buying a lot in a subdivision and we're already confused about where the property line is because it's fair, like new construction land development, where is this information the seller should have to show what the buyer is buying and frankly what the seller is selling? And if the buyer doesn't buy, the seller gets the benefit of the survey for the next buyer. I might hedge and say, hey, seller,
Buy it.
where's the survey? Contingent upon the seller providing a survey. So there's probably an exception just about every rule. Like didn't I just start off and say, we have a buyer's expectation. They want to do a walkthrough on an empty house, want the seller to move out. That's not normal. That's not common. So there's probably an exception to every rule, which is why I love having the job we have. No technology can think like that to replace us because every property is different. Every person's different. Yeah,
I'm
Tina.
so happy I came to this class because I really, really thought that something like the fence would be found with the title company and the PR.
Could.
Is that wrong?
Could. Is it legal description would show it. If it's read and picked up, that's the point. So instead of sign an initial below, let's do a little bit more than just send it and sign it. We've got to send it and explain it. Explain it before you sign it. Send it, explain it, sign it. Send it, educate, sign it. Something is in between there. And if we miss that, we're just in 2018 real estate world, we're setting ourselves up for some big trouble by not fulfilling our fiduciary duty to explain the documents. As a matter of fact, it's also a state licensing rule. So there's minimum standards that a licensee has to abide by. There's only a few, but one of them is to explain the documents and help them craft a response. If that means counteroffers or addendums or forms, that's a minimum requirement that the state has. So we'd also be in trouble there. So, okay. That was a good discussion. We're all like scared to death. Did anyone not really want to quit real estate right now? This is it's too much, litigation. Okay, questions that Tofu, and then we'll.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, even though I'm a newbie, but for fixing and flipping, the other thing I do is kind of do research, and I would go to the recorder's county's office, and it has a layout of the acreage and the lot, and it kind of tells you exactly where.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you have a potential buyer that's interested in the property,
Yeah.
you kind of do that research before.
Yeah.
And know where the fence is.
Yeah.
And whatnot.
Yeah, very good. And I like pointing them to these things, or sending the link, but sometimes we have to be careful that we're not the source.
Right.
So when I went to real estate school, I thought you should probably go get a measuring tape, so I got 100-foot measuring tape. And I thought, I'm going to make sure, that my buyers know exactly what they're getting, and we're going to measure these things. And I was so intrigued by how to measure property, and we draw out the squares and the triangle and the little extra room, and then the bay window, and how we do all that. And then I took a class by Dave Johnson, who at the time was the division director, and he said, "Throw the tape away." And I went, "Oh man, look at this tape." But another spin of that was, if you do find yourself with the tape, hold the dumb end, he would say. Hold the dumb end of the tape. I'm like, I don't know what's the dumb end of the tape. He goes, the one where you ask the other person, "So what does it say?" Okay, that end, the one that you go walking, So, we just don't ever want to be the source. So if it's a number of those kind of questions, what's the crime rate? What are the schools like? Is there is radon a problem in this area? What do you say? Well, it's an older home, so we do want to do some remodeling. How about lead-based paint? Is that a problem? And we're so tempted to kind of say, it's not a deal. Maybe you would go by our own experiences, when in fact it's not our job to weigh in an opinion about whether or not someone should have a survey, whether they should have a mold test, a meth test, a lead-based paint test, an electrician to come look at it, a roofer to come look at the roof, where the property line is the fence the property line. All those issues should be pushed to someone else, and then they should decide whether or not they want to move forward.
That's called
So-
an inspection, right?
I think generally that would all be inspections. So whatever that was, that last transaction, how many inspections were there? 6 inspections.
There was
Mold. There was electric. We have an arborist went to look. We had a stucco inspection. We had a roof inspector. My goodness, how many more inspections are there? But he did about all of them. So.
Did he pay for them?
Yeah, he paid for them, and each one of them were probably due. I think that he was wise to do that. All right, so what do we do when the request is completely unreasonable? What could we apply from Dale Carnegie to get through all this? What would Dale say if he were here? So again, how many people have read this? Raise your hand.
A long time.
Yeah, a long time.
And no one online is weighing in, are they? Oh, Michael is. Okay. Well, good morning, Michael. Let's test it. Michael, do a test chat if you can, if you're still listening. So I'll tell you what, I'll give you the principle and then we'll weigh in.
Michael, you there?
No, Mike Reyes. Okay, yeah, he says, I'm here. Great. Well, if you have a question, Michael, or anybody else, yeah, send the question. I'm going to give away this book, by the way, today.
Okay.
I'm not sure how I'm going to do that, but I'm going to give it away to someone. This would be your book that you could have, that you could read from. It's your book. I'll give it away.
Will I have your signature?
Like I sign it as if, I'll sign it, Dale will. On behalf of Dale, his attorney in fact.
So are you asking what we can do?
What could we do to deal with difficult, challenging expectations or situations with clients by utilizing what Dale taught in his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People?
Listen.
Michael says he wants to also be involved in owning the book. Okay, great. So what do you think, Allie? Sorry.
I don't think you ever dismiss their concern. I think you acknowledge what their concern is and try to address that, even if it's kind of unreasonable or.
Okay, so let me find the principle. I think I know what it is. Let's see if there's anything else in there. But that would be that we never win an argument. The only way that you win is to not have one. So we never win an argument. How do you do that?
Not having one?
By not having one? So how do you have, what if they're argumentative?
Well, you agree with a lot of the stuff that they say and no buts and
Okay.
howevers, you just,
So
I get what you're
we
saying.
agree quickly.
Stay calm.
Okay?
Yeah.
So we remove ourselves from the outcome. This is so big for all of us in commission sales. If you are attached to the outcome, you're not going to be at your best. And that may take a while to master that technique, because you want to be you want to be competitive, you want to do a good job, you want to win, you want to get the deal done, but it can't be about you. So, all right, what else did we do? All these were Dale's principles, so good job.
I came to you with a really difficult client, and you gave me that very advice, which was that I was driving to North Ogden every week
Yeah.
to show somebody something.
Yeah.
And in my own private space, I was going, "Urgh!" And you were saying, as long as you have time, keep doing it. And then when she came to town, I basically wanted to strangle her. But as soon as I got out of the car,
Okay.
I said, it's okay, because I'm here to have you get the outcome you want. It's not the outcome I want, even if I need to keep driving up here. And all of a sudden, the emotion just went, it got super, it was all good. It was all good. She bought the house, we closed, nobody was angry, it was all good.
Nice. Nice.
So as soon as I took myself out of it and said, it's all about you and you being happy with the house that you want, it was good.
Yeah. So Debbie found herself running a bunch of errands kind of thing, I'll run up there. Okay, will you go do this? Will you meet this person here? I need to measure this. The carpet guy might be this. Could you have this
And
cabinet?
it was an hour away
Yeah.
each way.
Wow.
So they were being pretty demanding, but what a great opportunity to serve somebody and make an impression on a client for the rest of your life with this client. This is a one time we get called to the trenches, and it's important to them, and they'll never forget that. So yeah, it can be, extremely inconvenient at times. What else? What other advice would you give before I start giving you all the Dale Carnegie stuff?
Have a sense of humor.
Okay. So I call that lesson 5.
As soon as they
I mean, sure, I got nothing better to do on a Friday night. Thanks for saving me from the to-do list. Saturday morning. Passive aggressive? Maybe it's in there a little bit. But a mentor of mine said, don't forget lesson 5. And I what's lesson 5? And they said, never take yourself too seriously. And then, of course, what did I ask after that?
What's 6?
I'm like, okay, so what's 1, 2, 3 subtitles? Could you give me the book, the link, the chapter, the video? And then, of course, he laughs. Will, there's one lesson. That's why he called it 5. You guys pick that up? How clever that was? Because the person who's taking themselves too seriously wants to know, well, what's 1, 2, 3, 4? The most important ones. Wait, am I too serious? So, and they knew I'd take the bait. Don't take yourself too seriously. I think this one's kind of tied. These are kind of tied together. You know, it's kind of hard to find some fun and humor and not take yourself too seriously if you're so tied to the outcome every single day. It's going to close. It's going to fail. It's going to close. It's going to fail. Like, oh, you look happy. Yeah, because the deal's going to close. And then the next day, well, it's failing. Yeah, I'm miserable. Totally an agent tied to the outcome. But think about how we are when we deal with those situations if we're tied to the outcome. I mean, can you remain calm? Allie says, remain calm. How do you do that if you're, every single conversation?
I think it's very hard to work as hard as you can to have someone trust you. I think that's the basic. Like every conversation, all you're trying to do is make sure that they trust you. I mean, if you're trustable,
Yeah.
And then not take some things seriously and not take some things for. I mean, that would be a great thing to learn.
Yeah.
To just completely separate yourself. If you're obvious, I mean, you're in real estate. You can't be tied to the outcome. Things blow up every minute.
Yeah.
So that's something you got to accept way back.
Yeah. What could we celebrate then? I mean, what can we really hang our hat on? Like, no matter whether they close or not, what could we hang our hat on and say, no, my stepdad, so he's a salesperson through the 60s and 70s and selling insurance. Now he's a big wig at one of the major insurance companies and has 2,500 agents all around the country. He's doing extremely well. But he had a habit of buying. He'd go to the store and he'd go to the bakery and he'd say, "Yeah, I need a cake." And they'd say, "Okay, I think this one will do." And then he would say, "It's for a friend of mine." And so, would you put "Good job, Ron" on it? And his name's Ron. So they'd be like, "Oh, good job, Ron." And he's like, "Yeah, that's great." So anytime he did a good job, he'd go to the bakery and get himself a cake, and he'd say, "Yeah, could you put "Good job, Ron" on that?" So, but what could we hang our hat on so we could get a cake that said, "Good job, Matt. Good job, Mo. Good job, Ron. Good job, Nicole."
Then you did your best.
Okay. So it can't be the closing then. I have an indicator for you, maybe. Michael, what would you say online? What would you say? See if he's still listening. What could you hang your hat on? I love your input. But what if you improve the relationship? What if that became our indicator? So you see, you fought the battle, right? And they didn't buy the house, but you got yourself the cake because the relationship is better today than it was when you started. Could that be a way we grade ourselves? Mm-hmm. So we focus on the relationship. Warren Buffett said, a quote, the thing about relationships are they take decades to really build, but they can take 5 minutes to destroy. So be careful what you say. So another analogy of that was an antique silverware that my grandmother would take out these antique silver pieces at rare occasions. And then afterwards, they never went into the same kind of water, the same kind of washing process. They were polished differently. They were cleaned differently. They were treated differently. And I remember her saying, well, because we want them to what? Want to last. So if you want it to last, you treat it differently. So think about the relationship with our buyers and sellers. We want it to last? Absolutely. Whether they buy or sell is not the thing. I get we could have our key management numbers, what's our percentage of listings sold, and how well I get all that. I'm not blind to that, but it would never be more important than how we progress the relationship. The reason why Debbie's client all of a sudden went, oh, okay, because now Debbie becomes a valued asset, where before she may have been perceived as an obstacle. I want this. I see what I want. You are in the way of getting me what I want. Now there is no value. But if I see Debbie as a way to get me what I want, now she's valued in my life, whether I buy the house or not. It's almost not even material. So it's an interesting, I mean, this whole this is why I love real estate. Agency says we represent their best interest, and yet we're commissioned salespeople. For the most part, we're independent contractors. You know, what an interesting mix, try to make that work. Those are two powerful forces. You know, I mean, I only survive my business if I close houses. And why are we here? To help people buy and sell property. That's what we do. And I'm suggesting it's bigger than that. We're here to make relationships and in our space. That doesn't mean I minimize my role or my purpose. I certainly don't do that. Because I'd be like telling if my dentist never talked about dentistry. That'd be weird. You know? Like that, but that's because that's the role he plays in my life. You know? My investment banker, that's his role. My insurance guy, same kind of thing. So I do, you know, I want to play the role I'm asked to play, but I would never minimize a relationship. So Michael says, I'm still in my first year, and most important thing in the world is building relationships. If someone trusts me, I did my job. I agree. You guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did my job. So that's how I look at it. Did the relationship improve? Then victory. I'm like, who am I to say that they should sell their home? Really? I'm that important? That's all about me? And if I bring my A game, then they're going to sell their home, move their family, and buy something somewhere else? I'm really that cool, huh? You know, you flip it on its head, you realize, yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. So we can't grade ourselves that way. What else would we do to find a way to get through a difficult situation? So the client's expectations are tough and challenging. We've got don't enter an argument, avoid it, agree quickly. Another way to do this, well, here, I'll add the other one. We find common ground. How many times I have to tell this difficult buyer, I represent you. And the conversation we're having is confidential. You ask me a question. Doesn't it sound reasonable that I ask these sellers to move out of their house? And you wanted my opinion. But please don't mistake my opinion for being different than what you want, because I want what you want, common ground. So I gave him a statistical look at it. I said, if I took 1,000 transactions, I say the last thing in the world we would do is to tell a seller to move out of the house and trust the buyer would close and be happy with the walkthrough. And when you add a refundable earnest money factor to it, that they wanted to cancel, they didn't like the walkthrough, I said, I think that even heightens our perspective. However, so see, he wanted this. If he thinks I can't help him get that, that's a problem. So how do I answer his question logically without having him feel like I'm in the way, but I can get him what he wants? How would you phrase that?
Well, it's helping them come up with their own answer and solution by asking more questions and walking them down that path and letting them tell you what they want. And then can you deliver on that? Helping them find a way to find their own solution. And through that process, maybe they'll realize, well, I can see this isn't, or maybe this is, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's trying to help them find their own solution. That's your job without telling them.
And you can't get them to have their own solution unless you ask questions. If you make statements, you're defending the other position, or it could sound like that. So if you do make statements, make sure that they come with a disclosure. I represent you. I want what's best for you. You asked me, let's take a look at 1,000 transactions. This is the case. If I'm going to have them come up with their own solution, I have to ask questions. Do you think that this is the only way for us to solve the problem of this mystery of whether those floors, those hardwood floors in that house, are warped with some kind of water damage? What's he about to tell me? Yep, it's the only way. It's the only way known to man. 1,000-page book. Only thing on it says only way, only way, only way, only way, only way, only way. But that's the only way you get people to answer their own problem, is to ask questions. And so what we typically want to do in emotional situations is we want to make statements which enters you into an argument. You got to be very careful. Now you're arguing. They have a point, you volley back. They hit you a pitch, you feel like you have to take the opposite view. It's really horrible. You find now you're in an argument. Would it be better to ask a question? Now they're trying to come up with their own solution, which who can argue with yourself? It's harder to do, isn't it? Something, you say, well, I just want to play devil's advocate. Okay. I don't even know what that means anymore. I don't even know where I could find any good in that at all. I'm willing to talk like logically, but to be devil's advocate, I don't know how to do that. Like literally, and maybe even figuratively, I don't know, because it doesn't do any good into the relationship. Someone points a point of view, the other person says, well, let me play devil's advocate. What are you about to hear?
Yeah.
It is almost as if it's a pass. Okay, it's not really what I think, but this is what the devil thinks. It's almost like I'm going to play devil's advocate. Okay, I mean, is this your own thought or just what the devil might say? So I find it, I don't know that those phrases work in building relationships, is what I'm saying, when it gets tough. Now, what if your client says, well, let me play devil's advocate? All these are still applying.
Is it okay just to simply say, I have an idea. Can you just give me the list of I just want to hear everything you're concerned about. The warping of the floors. Okay, I can talk to them about removing all their loose, what are they called? Area rugs.
Yeah, there's area rugs.
Tell me what else is your concern?
Yeah.
Because the seller's agent is not going to accept that they move out all their clothes and all their furniture and remove everything from their home before their home is sold. It just doesn't happen here. But that creates an argument by saying that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could.
I mean, it's just so not logical.
Yeah.
It's just like.
Yeah. So I brought this up last week because it was fresh in my mind. It just entered my. So my dad is an emergency room physician, but my oldest daughter was born with a congenital heart defect. So my dad and I have been going on, and she's now 27. Okay, so we've had 27 years of managing Mackenzie's situation. So she had an open heart surgery when she was 5, and she had another surgery at 21, and she's got different valves in her heart. One's called a melody valve. One was a cadaver valve. And I mean, she's had different surgeries. But growing up, my dad would always say, Mackenzie doesn't fit the statistics. So you would have these like norms. You'd look at it and say, well, 10,000 cases, this would be true most of the time. So 1,000 real estate transactions, this is what we would say. This would be our advice. But what rang in my head with this buyer as a way to be agreeable and not be the obstacle was that I was completely and totally willing to do what?
What he wanted.
Manage this unique case of its own merit and kind of like throw out the window the norms or the precedences or statistical odds and that sort of thing. So I found a way to agree and agree quickly. And I even when I took an opposite point of view from the statistics, I warned him that I'm not trying to be the opposite point of view. You only asked me, does that sound reasonable for other transactions in my position? And I said, well, 1,000 transactions, and I've been on the other side many, many times too. No. However, I'm willing to make your case. See this conversation we're having right now? You know, I'm like, this is just between you and me. So, by the way, real estate agents, let me tell you how right this difficult buyer was. Okay? Well, first of all, the general home inspection, we find, let's just call it item 1, problem. Look on the seller's disclosure. Did the seller say anything about it? Nope. So let's go and get another inspector. Let's call it the roof inspector. Well, there's a leak in the carport and garage. Let's go to the seller's disclosures and look at leaks, garage, roofing. Anything said there? Nope. So let's go now on to stucco. Well, it's a brick house and stucco was put over it. So we can see clearly, general home inspector, picture, gutter, valley of roof, crack in stucco, stucco's pulled and cracked and pulled away where you see brick under the stucco. So stucco, 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 crack, no stucco. Check the seller disclosures. What does it say about stucco? Nothing. So it gets better. The stucco inspector says, do you realize they've repaired this?
Oh my gosh, they didn't mention it in the.
And they didn't mention the repair either. So let's go back to this request of if I'm going to buy the house and there's hardwood floors everywhere, and by the way, in their past, they bought a home with hardwood floors and they were warped. And then we went to try to replace and repair them. He couldn't find the exact color, the exact hardwood floor. So he had to do the entire floor came out. That's his past experience. So now what do you think?
I think he has every right to be very demanding.
Sure.
It's the wrong house.
It's the wrong house.
Yeah.
Well,
It really is.
well, what's the end? You want to know the end of the story?
It's a great house.
I think the house would have closed. I think it was right enough. I think we found a way to get through it, but it wasn't the right time. So it wasn't the right time for the buyer because of other life issues, which is why I brought this up in the beginning. Who am I to say that I could rate myself on the fact that the buyer bought the property? Now I have a victory, and if they don't, I have a loss. How blind am I to really more important things with humanity than my role as a realtor in a transaction? It wasn't the right time. So something came up in this family to keep it confidential, but something came up in a health nature, which came as a shock to them, and they got the news through 2.5 days before due diligence is over. They got the devastating news. It was not time to buy it. So, am I proud about how we handled it? You dang right I am. We showed great character as a company. We did the right things. We represented our buyer client well, even though you could say the expectation was off and challenging and different, but we found a way to be agreeable. We found a way to not be the obstacle. I think we found a great way also to argue his points all along the way. So I think that one would kind of go down in history for me as one of a good lesson to manage the uniqueness of the transaction and manage the relationship along the way and be emotionally removed from the outcome. You're really powerful that way. So, yeah, good stuff, right? Yeah? Oh, how many other tips here? We'll put a bow on this and call it good. on at least that subject. I'll move on to something else. What else can we use from Dale Carnegie? What's the other points we're missing?
I looked up since I have no memory of the book,
Yeah,
it says, try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view.
yeah,
Because a lot of times, the nicest people, Chuck and myself included, when it comes down to the closing, it is very frustrating. They're at one of the worst times of their lives. Everything feels like it's a big problem and you're frustrated. And as soon as you put yourself in their shoes, you can kind of go, wow, this is a lot.
yeah. Yeah, that is so important. And remember the phase of a listing presentation? What's phase 1?
Connection. Is it this one?
Yeah. What's right after that?
Asking questions.
Yeah. How do we ever really understand someone's point of view if we don't ask questions? And if we're in too big of a hurry and we don't really dig deep enough to understand, we won't get their point of view and their perspective and see it through their eyes. The same principle applies when we're talking about statistics. If you find yourself quoting statistics on today's market, tell people why it matters from their perspective. If you can't make sense of why it matters in the statistics, I would say it's no good. It's not worth talking about. So you discover people's perspective by asking good questions. Like you're generally interested in them. So I think that's what he's saying is that we're authentically interested in them. It's another, whoops, wrong color, okay. How about this one? Never tell another person you're wrong. Okay, by raise of hands, how many of you ever told another person you're having a discussion and you go, you're wrong?
I probably have.
Every single person, you can't see this, but all of us
Like a
have done it.
Or your husband.
Anyway.
Yeah, right, that's every day.
Angie, did you just say Todd is wrong all the time?
Well, I think sometimes they always think they're right. We think that's why we're having yeah. We both think we're right.
What does that happen though? Have you ever been told, hey, you're wrong? How does that feel?
You go,
You go, I beg your pardon?
Your defense is way too big.
Sure.
It almost went to a fist fight with us when we told somebody that he was dead wrong. I mean, honestly, we almost got socked.
Really?
It was that bad.
Wow.
He was pretty belligerent.
He was saying, you can get like an artificial offer on this, and then we're gonna give them a $30,000 less price, and we're gonna demand that they sell it to us for $30,000 less. And I'm just like,
And it was
you're
our,
so dead wrong
it was our fiduciary duty
to do this.
to do that.
Your fiduciary duty was to make up a fictitious offer?
That's what he was
Okay,
saying.
so actually your fiduciary duty is to only follow lawful instructions.
Right.
So the law would not permit you to act that way. If you did, you'd find yourself probably in some lawsuit with the other side because it would have damages to them, but also a licensing violation, you'd essentially be out of the business, find yourself in a lawsuit.
But it
And we
got us
could
like-
not say, well, I did it because my client wanted me to do it. So how do you do that when it's tough and they're emotional and they're adamant, you're going to do this and this is how we're going to get more. I want you guys to come up with a fictitious offer so I can say we have multiple offers and now you have to pay more.
Wow. I knew.
What other way do you say then you're wrong?
That would be illegal and I would get in trouble and then we would both get in trouble.
No, he wasn't listening to it. He seriously stood up, almost was gonna punch us.
I think at that point you walk away.
We asked him to leave, and we just had to let emotions cool. It was the only thing we could do.
And you continue your relationship.
It was the ex-husband of our actual client.
Huh.
So we kind of just got him
So-
out of the picture.
I'll try this out. Here's my dialogue. I would say, I guess I need somebody to be the upset person.
One of them, they know how.
Okay.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. Debbie, I appreciate your enthusiasm.
No, you don't get it. You don't get it. You are not representing my client. As this is your fiduciary duty to get them the best offer that we can.
It is.
So how are you gonna do that?
Within the law. How about we do that so we don't get sued?
Well, I'm gonna put it in an offer so that it can come up as, she's gonna get it for 30,000 less.
You're gonna make up an offer, or are you gonna
Yes.
have it be a real offer?
It'll be a real offer because I can afford it too.
Okay, so one of the rules that I'm obligated to play by is I have to disclose what the truth is. I'm sure you could appreciate that, right? You would want me to be dishonest with you, would you?
Of course not, but I'm here to defend my client, my ex-wife.
Your ex-wife. Me too. We're both on the same team.
See, you
Yeah.
refused it really well. Chuck was ready to just punch the guy out.
I mean, we're on the same team. It's just, I'll tell you what I've learned though, is if we do this within the law, then we're a lot better off. I'd hate to see us in a lawsuit later. I mean, if we get, because that's what we're asking for, you know? And frankly, I can't even participate in that. So, I mean, you know.
We didn't really know how to diffuse it
Yeah.
at all. We just kind of sat there looking at each other like, oh crap.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Look, I think half the time I probably go, there's probably a point where I go, I'll tell you what, why don't we talk tomorrow?
Yeah.
You know, give you time to think about it. Let's just kind of sleep on the situation. Let's chat tomorrow. You know, just, and there also might be a point where I'd say, I think you should get a different agent. Because I can't do things that are unlawful, nor would I want to. And frankly, I don't really think you want me to do that. You know, just right now, it's kind of heated. You know, I sense it. I sense that you're emotional about it. You care a lot about it. And I love your passion. I love your passion. We're on the same team.
Oh, I never said
You really
that.
want me, where's the question was? You really want me to be lawful, don't you?
Oh, those are good responses.
It's a question. It's also got the agreement here. What was it? Oh, find common ground. Yeah, we're on the same team. We want the same thing.
We didn't ever say any of that.
It just sounds like you really took a step back and totally checked your heartbeat and totally slowed down the, I mean, that was good.
That is
Although
good.
you've told me about 7 times how much you love my passion, so I've got to think about what I was doing.
Here's your point.
Bettina's
very
passion
nice.
is her maker's gift to her. Right? So to think that we would say, well, that's a bad thing is ridiculous for anybody. And so authentic. Okay, there's another one. Their name.
Oh, yeah.
So I wake up every morning and I know that I can only have a good day is if I can only be fulfilled, which is my real payday, is if I can help somebody, like fundamentally help somebody. And if I can't help them, at the end of the day, I'm gonna go, that was a waste. And then I would have felt like I should have just been on vacation. That would have been better. You know, so, but I only have seconds with people usually. I've got an hour and a half with you guys today, but most of the time I get seconds as I'm walking by. So thought about how I could do this. Maura walked by the front desk. I was talking to Courtney. I saw Maura and talked to Maura. If you clocked it from when I saw her to where she turned the corner, it was 7 seconds. That's the only time I interacted with Maura yesterday. So she comes around the corner. What do I have a choice. What am I going to do? I could ignore her. I'm busy. I mean, I'm having a conversation, right? I could just ignore her. And maybe Maura would never even thought 2 things about it. because our relationship is, I would suggest, is a good one, right? That's because there's been deposits in that account. You know, a few withdrawals here and there wouldn't even be noticed. Like if I didn't say anything. But I did choose to say something. I looked at her and made eye contact. And I said, what? And I called her by name. Hi, Maura. And then I said, how are you? Now I could have said, you know, like they'll, how are you? It's good. Okay, great. See ya. Which is most of our interactions. So how would I make that authentic? Maura said, I'm great.
Tell me about that. What's going on today?
She's walking away.
Oh, she's walking away.
Okay, so I've got 1 second, 2 seconds. So here's what I said. Maura, you're right. You are great. And that's the only interaction I have there all day. I said, I agree with that. You are great. So now, and that's the only time I said that to anyone all day. Totally authentic. Called her by name. Recognized her. So think of how many people you only have seconds with or minutes with. And are we building the relationship? I was on the way in this morning, I was also reminded of a quote. It goes like this, write this one down. It's, you can't convince the mind what the heart can't feel. Have you heard that one before? You can't convince the mind what the heart can't feel.
It's in the song somewhere.
So what I always remember about that is that the only way that I'm going to build relationships with people is if they feel that I care about them. And there's just truth to that. They're kind of hard to argue with the reality that you care about them. So that's how you avoid arguments. There's already a feel that we're on the same team. There's already a feel that you want the same thing and that you're valued and you're shoulder to shoulder. Like literally, Allie, come stand up here. So I said shoulder to shoulder. So watch this. Now face me and let's have a conversation. So if we get in a potential, you have high heels on or something? What's going on here? Look at the camera. I look so short. This is a problem. I need to step back next. Thank you, Allie. Hey, how are you? Good. If we were actors on the set, they'd be like, could you get those heightened shoes for this guy? Yeah, right. Okay. So, and all this is, out there for the world to see. It's like when everyone asks me, how tall are you? I'm like, tall? I get the word tall? But if we're having a conversation and we find ourselves volleying, like it gives potential argument, what I always think to myself is let's see it from the same point of view. So now we go shoulder to shoulder and I say, look, I got to see it from her perspective. I've got to see it from her perspective. And we're both going to map a plan on how we're going to get there together, shoulder to shoulder. Impossible to argue it. We want the same thing, but I've got to convince her that we want the same thing. We both want the transaction closed as best we can without a lawsuit. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
Okay, so at the end of the day, the last thing in the world we want is a lawsuit from the buyer claiming misrepresentation that we forged documents in order for them to pay more. Right? You can have a seat now. Thank you. Okay. that you are to pay more, and that I was accomplice in the same thing. We'll both find ourselves in some serious hot water. And the money that we perceivably may save in this whole deal would be pennies compared to what we would be fined. And let's get real, there could even be jail time here. And the attorney's fees, the fines in which I'd face, and I think I might even lose my license. I'm just saying, I want what you want. That's a dead-end road, and maybe not even a dead-end road. You know what that is? That's off the cliff. And as much as I want what you want, and I want to see us get the top dollar and net the most, because that is what we do well. See, that's me going back to common ground. So, okay, so we call people by name. How do you memorize everybody's name? By the way, raise your hand. Let's do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, there's 15 people in the room, 16 counting me. How many of you right now, raise your hand if you could give, if I asked you to go around the room and give everyone's name, could you do it?
There's two people.
Angie, could you do it?
Yeah, I don't know you.
Okay, Angie, raise your hand. She could do it. You got all 16?
Retired all.
Okay. All right, anybody could do 15 out of 16? Well, some of them had their name tags on. It's a little easier.
I'd like to do one then.
You could do one, only the only name tag you could see?
Yeah. Just kidding.
I don't know her name, and I can't remember Dave's son's name. Sam.
What are you?
Sam, okay, so 50.
What are the two ladies on the other side? What is your name?
Lori.
Nicole.
Nicole, and what's your name?
Leanne.
Okay, so here's how to do that. Matter of fact, when you came in, I said, could I get your name, please? And you said, Tofu. And I said, welcome what?
Tofu.
Welcome, Tofu. I'm glad you're here. Okay, by the way, did you feel welcome?
Yes.
Did you feel like we had like a little connection there? You were good with that? Okay, me too. I totally did. First of all, I'm glad that she's here. I'm glad you're all here. So you see these little simple things. So and I'd be like, so I know Leanne, but I would say if I didn't know Leanne, I'd say, could I get your name? Eye contact.
Leanne.
Leanne. And I would repeat it back. Leanne.
Glad to be here.
Leanne, I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you.
And it's good to see you again. I missed you. It's been a while.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
My day's complete.
Yeah. But that's the, you know how hard that is when you don't. So what if you didn't make eye contact?
I
Really tough.
swear, just the warmest feeling went through my body. It really did. And I mean that authentically. Because that does. That feels so good when someone just takes that moment. I mean, it's like a little kid. How does a little kid feel when mom and dad gets on their level?
Yeah. Yeah. These are the roots of and the ingredients of relationships. So you got to check your mind, right? When you go into these appointments, you got to get to know them. What's important to them? What's the obstacles? My expertise is real estate sales. There's troubles along that journey. There's minefields along that journey. My job is to protect them. This wire fraud thing is a new opportunity for us to guard their funds, to make sure that at the very end of the transaction, that doesn't end up divided in 1,000 accounts somewhere in countries all around the world. It's happened. By the way, remember I said KSL is running the story tomorrow. I'm going to be anxious to see what they have to say about it. I'm going to see if I can't try to find a way to record that if it is good. I think they grabbed Josh Stern from Keller Williams, probably because Josh spends money at KSL advertise. So maybe that's how he wait, I'm on camera here. What am I doing? Josh, you're great. But maybe there's a relationship there, right? They said, I want to show some loyalty to somebody who's been loyal to us. So if we could run a story that's valuable for the public, why not involve him? Yeah. So, okay. Any other tips? And we'll put a bow on this. Let's see. In a nutshell, the only way to win an argument is to avoid it. Good. Show respect for the other person's opinion. Never say
You're wrong.
correct. Never say you're wrong. Number 3, if you are wrong, admit it quickly. Yeah. What if you got it wrong? What if you start giving advice and you didn't have a true picture of the whole situation, and now that you got new information, you go, oh, well, I misunderstood. You admit it. I was wrong then. Let's erase that. That's not my opinion.
Or own your mistake.
Yeah, and own your mistake. Yeah. This came up last week. I made a mistake with how much of this? Maybe I should turn off the camera. But I made a mistake in my role, and I didn't realize it for a couple of days. And then I went, yeah, why did I do that? Huh. And okay, now if you guys have ever, if you knew me personally, like if my wife were sitting here, she would say, if we play a game at the house and I lose, I'm not a very good loser. I'm working on it. I'm still working on improving this. But I just don't like to lose, even when it's a stupid card game. So anyway, I was kind of, now I'm starting to channel this like, you know, I made a mistake. And then for some reason, I just started channeling a lot of this stuff and said, look, I made a mistake. So I went to the person and I go, I have to apologize. I made a mistake. And I didn't mean to. I tell you what I was thinking at the time, I was misled. It's a misstep. I'm sorry. But I also went to my teammates and did the same thing. Like it's diffused, you know? Like it's just diffused. Now, what I can say with some pride is that the person that I made the mistake with was instantly like, they were sympathetic to me. They could tell I was upset about it. And it reversed. And they said, Will, it's okay. Like, I can tell that you're upset. I said, well, I am. I feel so bad. Oh, this is nothing, they said. I'm like, really? Seriously? And then I step back and think that's because there were so many deposits in this relationship over years. And they knew my heart already. They knew I didn't intentionally make a mistake to hurt them in some way. Because because the character's already been revealed in previous years. So what a unique, I guess not a unique experience for me, but a valued one, where the principle played out not only in what you guys do with transactions, but what we're doing all the time. I think that's pretty good. Thank you, Dale Carnegie, for writing a great book in 1936. It's been reprinted millions and millions of times. 80 years in print. Okay, all right, I'm going to put a bow on this class. Thank you for attending online. Send your emails and questions to, I don't know. I've got to work on my sign off here. All right. Sorry, see you guys.